All right, Maze fans, this is Bill M. back with another Maze commentary, my 17th commentary on Christopher Manson's book Maze. And in the last two, we were talking about the riddle of the maze, that ultimate puzzle, and now here is part 3 of 3. And yes, there will be spoilers in this, but gonna keep them gradual. Okay, first the obligatory overview. Part 1 of exploring the riddle was just basic info about the riddle without any spoilers. Part 2 was revealing the riddle itself that is hidden in room 45. And if you have not watched those two clips first, I think you should watch those first, even if you already know what the answer is. Now, in part 3, we're going to find the answer to the riddle that we found in room 45. Now, the book says that the answer is hidden along the shortest path, which means I'll also have to reveal the rooms of the shortest path. Not 100% room by room. I'll save that for another clip. But as with part 2, the spoilers here will be gradual. So if you reach a point in the video where you say, okay, I heard enough now, Bill. I don't want to hear any more spoilers. I want to figure things out for myself, or at least try to, now that I have some idea how that works. If that's what you're thinking, then by all means, stop the clip at that point. But before you do that, whether you listen or stop, just please give this clip a like if you could. Maybe even subscribe to my channel. Thanks. And let's move on. Okay, a quick recap. Remember that the 3 main challenges of Maze are, according to the book's directions: 1. Find the shortest path from 1 to 45 and back. 2. Find the riddle hidden in room 45. And 3. Find the answer to that riddle, which can be found somewhere on the shortest path. We know the solutions to all 3 of those main challenges. They were revealed from the publisher, officially, when the contest was over back in 1987. Now, my hypothesis is that knowing the solutions, we can figure out what the author did to encode them, and thus how he expected the reader to decode them. And this may help us get a better understanding of how to find intended clues to solve the other puzzles, such as choosing the other doors in the other rooms. And I did a clip on the CD-ROM. The CD-ROM game has items that are said to be particularly helpful and come alive when you click on them. And this seems to include parts of the riddle answer. So we're going to be including those when we take a look at things. Now, just some general spoilers before we begin. So like the riddle itself, the riddle's answer is a specific sentence in English, and you have to find the precise words that make it up. So it's not something really philosophical or esoteric like, well, the answer to the riddle is that there is no answer. Or looking at one specific room, saying, this room has a pair of dice in them, and I think the answer to what the riddle teaches is what the maze teaches, is that life is a gamble. No, it's not anything like that. Again, it is a specific phrase. So the order of the words of the riddle's answer roughly follow the order of the rooms of the shortest path, but not exactly. Some of these parts are easy to find. Others are going to leave you thinking, well, I see how the author did it, but geez, I never would have gotten that. And some other clues are still being debated. Again, we know the solutions, but trying to find out where precisely they are. It's one of those 3 cases. And like before, I'm going to reveal the solution one part at a time. Let's get started. Well, remember that the answer to the riddle is on the shortest path, so let's start with the first room of the shortest path, which of course is room number 1. We know that the first word of the riddle's answer, again because we looked ahead and cheated, is like. L-I-K-E, like. Well, if we look at the first room, there's a bunch of paper, and there's this piece of paper that's on the left-hand side of the room. And if we take that, flip it around, we see that the word like is on there. And in the CD-ROM version of Maze, in that game, you can hear the sound of crinkling paper in the background. It's this thing that's on kind of a loop. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's trying to give us a clue to find that answer. So again, stop the clip right here if you don't want any more spoilers and you want to try it on your own. But this should give you some idea of how the answer to the riddle is embedded on the shortest path. However, the next word is easily the toughest one to try to get. Now we move to the next room that's on the shortest path from 1 to 45 and back, room number 26. And in this room, we find the most important key word of the riddle answer. So you might think, okay, we see the letters A and S. Maybe the second word is as. Nope. The second word is actually atlas. Now, how were you supposed to get atlas? Well, here are some proposed explanations. If you take A and not just the S, but the whole word salt, S-A-L-T, you rearrange those letters to get atlas. Or you can also think of it as perhaps salt, S-A-L-T, with the A on the end, and the salt is reversed, because the salt shaker is inverted. So A and then T-L-A-S. And this is a similar strategy to a word we did cover in part 2 of looking at the riddle for one of the riddle question words. So, tricky, but it's not the first time Manson uses something like this in the book. Now, it would be kind of crazy if that was the only clue, but there are, a lot of fans believe, other clues that were additionally put in to kind of hint at the word atlas. So we see on the stage there's a moon, and there's also a planet Saturn hanging from there. Well, Atlas is also the name of one of Saturn's moons. And some people have tried taking this further. They say, well, it's launching the satellite. That's what the devil on the top represents. And we see the devils coming out of the stage, kind of like the stages of our rocket. And some say, well, the ringing of the bell, that's like the loud sound of the rocket launch. And, okay, I think some of that stuff is getting a little carried away. I did, however, notice the doors in room 26 are kind of shaped like rockets. And the men that are in the fez caps who are kind of shushing at each other, maybe that's some kind of metaphor for outer space, silence, spaced apart. Other fans have pointed out that the line in the text, "Which way now, children?" Well, if you wanted to find out which way to go, you might consult an atlas. Seems like a bit of a stretch, but something, again, some fans have proposed. Maybe by taking a closer look at the devil with the moon behind it, it looks kind of like Atlas, because I know if I wanted to encode the word Atlas somewhere, I immediately think of the figure Atlas, with big strong guy with the earth on his shoulders. Now, in the CD-ROM game, the salt shaker is animated by default, and clicking on the moon and Saturn each produces sounds. So again, I think that's an indication that the items they chose to animate in the CD-ROM game were ones pertaining to the riddle, or in this case, the riddle's answer, rather. Now, the next word is much more straightforward. Room 30. Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, yeah, those random letters that you may have seen in different rooms of maze, those typically refer to part of the riddle answer. And in room 30, we do see lots of letters. There's the O and the U in the back. Also, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H on the watch there with the F pointed to. There's also letters in the if no Eve sign. So F and OU, is it UFO, FOU? No. If we look in the dialogue, the guide is saying, well, they asked what the letters stood for, and I said, obviously they stand for something. And one of the guests says, yes, but why O and U? And you can take WHY phonetically as the letter Y. So the letters are Y, O, and U. And that is how we get the third word of the riddle answer, which is U. So far, we've got like Atlas U. Room 42. Okay, let's look for letters. We see the S and the P for the salt and pepper shakers on the door for room 4. Is SP part of the word? Are there letters in that saints that way, sinners this way? Do we unscramble something like that to get the word? Nope. It turns out that the next word in the riddle answer is bear. So how were we supposed to get this? Well, again, remember what I said about encoding versus decoding back in part 2 of my commentary on the riddle. If you wanted to encode the verb bear in a room, you're a puzzle maker, you want to hide the word bear in a way that can be discovered. Well, I think putting a physical bear, as is done here, is kind of the most straightforward way. And it's interesting, if you read the description that's in there, it gives a long description of the bear while suspiciously avoiding saying the word bear. But as with most of the things that Manson is trying to encode, I would think that there would be more hints, additional clues to point to bear. Now, the other signs that are on the doors, people have pointed out that they're all pairs. So from left to right, there's a pair of scissors, then the salt and pepper, that they make a pair on the table. Then there's the fruit, P-E-A-R, pear, and then there's a pair of dice. So I think what all of this is indicating is pear trying to rhyme with the word bear. Otherwise, I have no idea what those signs are, and I haven't really heard a good explanation either. Maybe they additionally refer to something else. It's always possible that Manson put in a clue that refers to both part of the riddle and something about the room itself for picking the right door. In this particular room, we're supposed to choose, as we're going along the shortest path, the door to room 4. I think the most obvious clue to that is the 4 boots that are in front. But maybe the pair is an allusion to that. Pair, look at the pairs of boots. I don't know. And there's also the picture on the very top of the feet of the bear that's there, and also matching that up kind of with the boots. So I think there are enough clues here to kind of indicate the word bear. Also, hanging your coats, that's kind of being bare, maybe? B-A-R-E? Now, this is kind of a stretch, but I noticed I assured, which is in the text. If you rearrange the letters, you get Ursidaes, which grammatically is incorrect, but Ursidae is plural of Ursid, or something like that. And so it's the scientific term for the classification of bears. Again, just something I found when I was trying to look around. I was trying to reverse engineer things by looking up synonyms for bears, the animal, and seeing what I could find. Ursidae, Ursids, Bruin, meh. Now, one more final thing is that if you look at the elephant's foot stand, which is what people used to use for stands and trophy hunting rooms and all that, there is a cane, there's an umbrella, and there's a baton. And I noticed, well, those spell out C-U-B, cane, umbrella, baton, cub. Maybe that's another indication of bear. I don't know. But that's all I got for this. Let's move on. The next room on the shortest path is room number 4, and there are actually 2 of the riddle answer parts hidden here. We'll look at one now and one later. Well, the next word in the riddle answer is it. And again, you may be thinking, how the hell are we supposed to get it from this room? Well, again, ask instead, how would a puzzle maker encode the word it? Because let's be fair, it's such a simple and common word, it. It would be kind of hard to try to hide it in something. I mean, the word it appears in the dialogue, but so do lots of other words. So why would it be the next word? Well, if you were going to hide the word it, maybe you could take the figures I and T and have something that looks like it in the room. And we do see in the forefront the candle and the gavel. They'll kind of resemble the letters I and T. There are also a lot of phonetic clues in the room. On the left side of the room, we see a poster of pegs fitting in there. So you have fit and we have the wood being split up, so that's split. Also in the dialogue, they talk about having to make a decision and flipping a coin, so that's split again. Also with the candle and the matches, that's lit. There was a hammering sound they heard in the other room. The hammering is here. The hammering, that's hit. And there's a chair in the background, sit. And the dialogue starts off with, what a foolish face. Pay no attention. Foolish face? Twit, maybe? I don't know. But that's my best guess as to how it was encoded in this room. Now, are there any hints from the CD-ROM game? Well, if you go to room 4 in the CD-ROM game, clicking on the axe or clicking on the wood gives you like a chop sound, like something just got chopped or split. If you click on the candle, you get a lighted match sound. Something sounds lit. So again, the clickable things on the CD-ROM do, once again, kind of point to items that do have something to do with the answer to the riddle. And again, we're going to talk more about room 4 a little later. Let's move on to the next couple of rooms in the shortest path. Now, these ones are much more straightforward, thankfully. Room 29, the hidden word is upon. There's a sign that says directions up and on. Well, put them together, you get upon. And in room 17, we see this poster on the left, or placard or what have you, that says Y-O blank, you are blank. Well, ignore the blanks and turn those words phonetically into letters, and you get Y-O-U-R. And the next word is your. So in these examples, again, much more straightforward. They were encoded, but not impossible to decode. Now, from this point on, the very next step is to go to room 45 if you're going on the shortest path. You finally reach the center of the maze. Well, room 45 itself does not have any, so far as I can tell, any of the answers to the riddle. The riddle itself is in 45. So finding the answer along the shortest path, no part of that is actually included in 45. Well, let's pause here and see how far we've gotten. We have walked the shortest path from 1 to 45. We haven't walked back yet. But so far, we have the words, like Atlas, you bear it upon your. And still only halfway through the shortest path, there is one final word to the answer. You can probably guess what it is from what I said. But in any case, this is where it gets a little different, because instead of the word itself being in a single room, the letters that make up the final word are scrambled along the second half of the shortest path, from room 45 back to 1. Now, there is still much debate about how Christopher Manson encoded some of the letters. Some more are straightforward, though. By the way, this pic on the right is not from Maze, but it is from the same author/artist, Christopher Manson. It's from one of Manson's other books called The Rails I Tote. Maybe I'll give a review of that sometime. Otherwise, let's move on. Let's do the easier letters first, the letters that doesn't seem to be much of any debate about. So the remaining rooms of the shortest path, we go from 45 to 23 and so on, all the way back to 1. As I said, the remaining letters are not in room 45. They're also not in 1. We used room 1 to get the initial word of the riddle solution. And, again, nothing in 45. So we're going to look at the remaining rooms. Now, in room number 8, that's the tilted room, you'll see that there is a piece of paper taped on the right-hand side of the wall, and it's a letter S that's on there. So we get the letter S. In room 12, there's a U and a D stacked in one corner. Those are 2 more of the letters. And in room 39, the wine cellar room, there is an R. There's a letter R that's next to the times table. And finally, in room 20, there is an extra S. On the tabloid that says extra, there's an extra letter S. Okay, so those are some of the letters that are on the final end of the shortest path. Pretty straightforward. As I said, though, there is some debate about some of the other letters, and this is where we get into the final letters. First of all, just to give out the spoiler this time, the final word of the answer to the riddle is shoulders. So the letters of shoulders are scrambled along the remaining rooms of the shortest path. So the letters we found so far, as I mentioned on the previous slide, S, R, D, U, and the other S. And the remaining letters are H, O, L, and E. Well, that does spell hole. I suppose we could look for a hole. There is a hole on the shortest path back. But let's actually look for the letters H, O, L, and E. Now, the remaining rooms on the path that we have not looked at yet are rooms 23, 4, 15, and 37. Now, I know we already did take a look at 4, but the thing is, although we take 4 on our way to 45, we also have to cross into room 4 on the way back. So that's what I meant earlier by saying we are going to take a look at room 4 again. Now, we have 4 remaining letters, and we have 4 remaining rooms we haven't looked at. Is it necessarily 1 letter per room? That's up for debate. Some fans say yes, some say no, and we'll get into more details of that in the next few slides. First of all, the letter L. If we return to room 4 on our way back from 45, in the CD-ROM game, the hand torch between 24 and 43 animates. So we see those hands holding these lights or torches throughout the corridor. And the one that's the second to the right, the one that's between the exits to 24 and 43, both trap rooms, one is nudging itself towards the map. Well, it's nudging itself towards 43, which is a trap room, but I think it's more so nudging itself to draw our attention to the map of the maze that's drawn, the maze poster that's inside the doorway. And if we take a look at that and we take a closer look, we flip it, we see the letters ELL in there. Well, those aren't the 3 letters ELL. We can take that phonetically as L, a single letter. So out of the remaining letters, H, O, L, and E, that is presumably where we get the L from. Now, the remaining 3 letters, there's some debate about where we're supposed to find them. Let's look at the letter H. So the rooms on the shortest path we have not used yet for the riddle, 15, 37, 23. Some fans argue that H is in room 15. So I have the picture there of room 15. And if we look at room 15, there are a lot of H words. There are 2 hats. There's a heart-shaped chair. On the chair is a hare, a rabbit, H-A-R-E. On the left end of the room, there's a poster of a house, a drawing of a house. And on the other end of the room, to the right, there's a list of Greek heroes. And underneath that is a helmet. So a lot of H words. And some other fans have said, well, if we look in the lower left corner of the room, there's that sign with a bird flying and a cloud and a crescent moon and a bolt. What on earth does that mean? Well, one speculation is that it means things in the sky. That's what they all have in common. And therefore it means look up. And if we look up, there's that pattern in the ceiling. It's like a grid. And some argue, well, it looks like a bunch of H's. Okay. But I have another idea. If we look at room 37, there's that rope ladder. And if we take a look, it looks like there's an H right in the rope ladder itself. So other fans like myself argue that H may be hidden in there. Now, it could be that, the author put H in both places, both ways to hint the letter. It's possible, even though we only use the letter once. So, are there any indications from the CD-ROM game? Short answer is no. In room 15, clicking on the moon gives a wolf howl. Clicking on the bolt gives a thunder sound. And in room 37, you cannot click on the ladder because, well, the ladder is in the doorway. So if you click in the doorway, it's just going to take you to room 20. Also in room 37, there are other things you can click on, other things that animate, whether or not you click on them. The eyes that are on top of the columns blink. It's kind of creepy. Clicking on the dice gives a shaking sound of dice. Clicking on the net gives a whoosh, like a bagging sound. Clicking on the jug gives kind of like a percussive sound, the same kind heard in room 17. Sounds kind of like a racquetball or a basketball hitting something. Presumably, these relate to selecting the correct door and not the answer of the riddle, the correct letter. So that's all I have for letter H. The letter E. Well, on the shortest path back from room 45, we take room 15 to room 37. And some fans have argued that while we have a bunch of H words in the previous room, we have a bunch of E words in this room. Not words beginning with E, but words ending with E. A sphere, a bottle, a table, a vase, a cone, a pair of dice, eye. And we're also told in the dialogue that net may help you catch the answer to your question. And net, N-E-T, well, there is an E caught in the middle of it. And if we look at the picture of the room, the net is kind of under the exit to room 10. 10 has an E caught in it as well. So some fans have said that this is all supposed to imply the letter E. Well, that's one idea. Another idea is that if we go back to room 8, yeah, we already did use that for the letter S that's taped onto the wall. But that table with the 6 legs, now that looks like a letter E that's in there too. So is there any help from the CD-ROM game? Maybe. So as I said, in room 37, the eyes blink and there are sounds clicking on the net, the vase, and the dice. Though, again, I think the dice is a clue for picking the right door, not solving the riddle. And in room 8, there are some animations and clickable objects, but the table is not one of them. So make of that what you will. Which brings us to the final letter, which I've saved for last, the letter O. Now, the only path room we have not looked at yet is room 23. Some fans say that the letter O is embedded in the scroll that you see on the bottom left of 23, and that this is what the scroll means. So if you read each line, everything right, nothing, the time is. Everything right. What does everything right mean? Well, it means everything is okay. Nothing, that means 0. The time is, well, another way to say that is o'clock. So okay, a 0, and o'clock. What do all these things have in common? A circle, a letter O or 0, and therefore that is the letter O. Now, some other fans have proposed other ways of finding O along the shortest path. In room 39, there's a tire in the corner. Some people have speculated that that is like a letter O. I think the shadow of the net in room 37, that makes a clear circle on the ground. So maybe that could be O. Interestingly enough, I didn't notice this myself till I put the pictures side by side. It looks like there's some similarities there with the tire with those threaded pipes next to it, and then the circle shadow of the net and the table legs and the table leg shadow kind of pointing in the same direction. Could just be a pure coincidence. Now, is there any help from the CD-ROM game? Well, in room 23, there are some animations and clickable objects, but the scroll is not one of them. And in room 39, clicking on the tire, however, makes a car sound, like a car starting up. And also, as I said, in room 37, clicking on the net itself makes a bagging noise. And we're also told in the text about the net capturing something we're looking for. So maybe you could take that as capturing that shadow as an O. So that's the end of the letters. Now let's put it all together. The riddle that is hidden in room 45, we solved that in part 2. What house will all live in is the question. The answer we get along the shortest path is like Atlas. You bear it upon your shoulders. What does that mean? Well, what does Atlas bear upon his shoulders? It's the world, or the earth, or a globe. And the contest would take any of those three answers as acceptable answers, correct answers to the riddle. Once you found the words, what it means. So that is officially confirmed by the publishers. It was officially part of the contest. Now, what does this riddle mean? Well, we could spend endless amounts of time having our different philosophical takes on what it means. What house will all live in? Like Atlas, you bear it upon your shoulders. You could, for example, take it as a commentary, all humans having to live on this same planet, one world. As Sting said in The Police, one world is enough for all of us. But as Manson says, it's a burden we have to take, etc. Now, here's an interesting thing that some fans have pointed out. Worlds is one of the acceptable answers to the riddle. And if we look on the front cover of the book, this book, Maze, with its impossible puzzles of trying to find the riddle and then trying to find the answer to it and then what that answer means. World was one of the acceptable answers. And look at that. The word world is right on the front cover. That whole time. Go figure. A couple of final things I want to interject. Some fans have proposed alternate answers to that, like Atlas, you bear it upon your shoulders. So the obvious answer is like an Earth or globe or world. And even though the contest and the publisher officially confirmed that is the answer, there was some talk I noticed on intotheabyss.net that Christopher Manson has supposedly said through some correspondence that there is a possible second solution. And some fans have proposed brain or head, that being another answer. So what house will all live in? Like Atlas, you bear it upon your shoulders. Well, we all bear our head, our brains above our shoulders. And it houses all our perceptions of people, and everybody is, their brain. Now, some other fans have proposed coffin. You bear it upon your shoulders. If you're a pallbearer, you bear the coffin upon your shoulders. And it's the house that all will live in, because in the end, we will all be in a coffin. But again, the contest confirmed that world, Earth, globe, is the official answer. And that concludes part 3 of my 3-part commentary on the riddle of the maze. I want to thank you all for listening, and hopefully you learned more from this, not just the answers themselves, and not just how to find them, but hopefully some new ways to look at the puzzle. As I had said before, I'm hoping this gives you more insight than frustration. The maze, it's not like Sudoku. It's not a complete linear thing. Maze calls for some creative thinking, not just analytical thinking. And I myself am still discovering things about this book decades later, after, looking at it since the early 90s. So I don't know when my next commentary is going to be, but this certainly is not my last one. I'm not planning this to be my last one, because there is still more to explore. Maybe I can do a clip on the correct doors for the different rooms of the shortest path. Hopefully go through every room eventually. Not just on the shortest path, but the other rooms in the book. There's lots of other little subtopics to go through, like the objects. Why are there these umbrellas in all these rooms? What's the deal with the top hats? I have some ideas on some of that. Some people have expressed interest in seeing more demos of the CD-ROM game. Maybe we can do something like that. Who knows what else? In the meantime, thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.